Hi everyone! In today's video, I'll show you how I painted this Firefighter Jack in my new Persona style portraiture. I'll show you the palette that I used during the skin tone portion of the painting. See the list of oil paints below that I set up on my palette. I'll explain why I group oil colors on my palette the way that I do. Also, I'll show you how I paint the head using the Selective Start method, which is done on top of a colored pencil sketch. I'm going to put the list of the oil paint colors that I use on my palette in the description. So check out how I've arranged the values on my palette, the lights at the bottom, middle, and then the darks at the top. And whenever I'm painting that value on the face, I know directly on my palette which pile of paint that I can select from. Also, I like to prepare the colors on my palette so that they're making transitions. So I'm going to be moving from one pile of paint, then the next pile beside of it will be the transition color that's going to take me towards moving into a different value. This is a good way to try it out. I can try it on the palette before I actually even put it up on the painting surface. So I've started painting my face on the shadow side. The light is actually coming from a little bit below because of the helmet and off to the right. And the visor on the helmet seems to be reflecting some light back down into the eyes. And with this portrait, I went ahead and did a colored pencil sketch that I'm painting on top of. Welcome to my channel, Shelly J. Cox and SJC Sport Couture. So as I mentioned, I've started with a pencil sketch that I'm painting right on top of. Now sometimes with Selective Start, I may just go ahead and begin with the actual painting. I will pick a feature in the face, perhaps an eye, maybe the mouth, and that's where I start, and I build each paintbrush stroke out from that first initial stroke. So another way that I'll start my paintings is sometimes I do an underpainting. So I'll take a single color, usually a brownish reddish color, and paint the entire painting, setting up all of the composition, and then let it dry, and then start my oil painting colors right on top of that. The underpainting starting method works really well if it's a complicated painting and you really want to focus initially on values. I'll have a video coming up soon where I will demonstrate this technique of starting with the underpainting using just the one color, so I focus on my values. So with the Selective Start method, there's a lot to think about with each brush stroke that you're laying down. You're trying to get the correct color with that brush stroke, and then I'm looking at each tiny form and I'm trying to make the correct transitional colors attach one form to the next, moving from value to different values. So yeah, there's a lot going on with each brush stroke, and I paint really slowly, so I've sped the video up so I won't bore you guys to death, but it's a really slow process, but it's also a lot of fun. I love seeing how the painting just comes to life as it builds out. It's good after you get a feature painted to turn and look at your canvas and use a mirror to view that feature. If there's any mistakes, they will pop out. You'll see them right away. And then go in and fix it. Don't keep painting. Definitely want to fix whatever errors you see. Check it again in the mirror, and don't proceed away from that feature until it's correct. Even though I have an initial sketch that I'm painting on top of, I'm still looking more at the actual painting that I'm doing for the correctness, the feature placement. So if I have a problem in that initial eye and I keep painting, then more than likely the whole face is going to have a problem, because I'm judging every new brush stroke based on that initial feature and those beginning brush strokes. So I learned the Selective Start method from my mentor Tina Garrett and from the Richard Schmidt book Alla Prima 2. If you're interested in learning more about the Selective Start, I suggest that you grab that Alla Prima 2 book by Richard Schmidt and give it a read. It's a really good book. I'll post the title down in the description. So here, take a look at the reference that I'm working from, and you can see how I have made some adjustments. I've given the head more tilt, definitely not painting the mustache, and just working through those skin tones. So as I like to say, you are the master of your painting, and I am not going to be a slave to any reference material that I am using. I'm going to adjust and change and make the composition my own, and I'm also going to make sure that I'm having fun with it. The thing that I do want to be correct here are the features. So not only will I be checking them with the mirror, but I'll also be using my proportion tool as well. I am going for a good bit of realism here in the face, especially with the eyes. However, I do want to have nice brush strokes. I want there to be brush strokes that have a bravura to them, that stand on their own as interesting and artistic, but still while maintaining that element of realism. The eye that I'm painting now is the closest eye to the viewer. I want it to have the most contrast, the most detail. I want it to be the focal point of the painting. So keeping that in mind, I also want to make sure that this feature has its own different edges. There needs to be a variety of soft and hard edges within this one feature. Another sign that lets you know the light's coming from below is the placement of the highlights in the eyes. Usually the highlights are a little higher up, closer to that upper eyelid, but these are pretty low, so that's signifying the light's below. You can see here that I'm not painting individual eyelashes. I like to paint them more as a group. Try to get the idea out of your head that you're painting an eye. Just think of it as different shapes that are different colors, different values, a mosaic, and just paint those shapes together, and an eye will appear. I'm really loving the way these eyes are coming out. I think they may be the best eyes to date that I have ever painted. I'm really loving how the colored part of the eye, the iris, is just kind of softly melding into the white of the eye. So I'm continuing down the face, and I'm just laying in small, short strokes of flesh color that connect one part of the face to the next part of the face. Hey, if you're getting some value out of this, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Also, subscribe to my channel so I know that you like the videos, and I'll go ahead and keep making them. And a big thank you to all the people that have subscribed to the channel. I really appreciate it. So I typically have been using flat brushes, and with this portrait I wanted to go ahead and try some rounds. So I got some new rosemary brushes in rounds using some of the synthetics, some of the faux sable brushes, and gotta say, I'm liking it. So I'm painting in here some skin tones. This part of the Firefighter helmet is see-through, and I want to go ahead and lay down some of the skin colors so that when I come back over it with the actual kind of olive color that's in that part of the helmet, it'll kind of meld with those flesh tones and look transparent. My flesh tones are pretty much built using my yellow ochre, light vermilion, transparent oxide brown, and then I will use some titanium white to adjust the value on that, and then I'll tone it to gray it down a little bit or take away some of the saturation using Viridian or Van Dyke brown. Now that's not like the colors that I use for every different portrait that I paint. Each individual person's skin tone is going to require different toning, and I may throw in some cat orange or some magenta, purples, just depends on each person's flesh color. So I do know, after painting from life and working with different photographic references, that the different colors throughout the face are zoned sort of like there's more yellow in the forehead. Then as you come down around the nose and the cheeks, you tend to have a bit more pink. And then moving into the lower face and jaw area, it tends to gray down and become more neutral. I'm also thinking about how is each plane of the face that I'm painting interacting with the light source. Is it perpendicular to the light source, being directly hit by that light? Is it parallel to the light source, running in the same direction as the light? Is it completely hidden from the light and in the shadow? Alright, so I'm just going to paint for a bit, and I will jump in when I feel like there's something I should explain. So I'm using this larger brush just to knock back any heavier brush strokes and reduce the glare. I didn't press hard. It is a very feather light touch when I do that. So I'm really just kind of tickling the paint in these smaller transitional areas. So where there's a tight, quick transition, I may notice something just needs to blend into that next value or that next area of the face a little more slowly. So you'll see me tickle that paint just a little bit. So I went ahead and painted in this strong separation line between the lips, but I do know that I'm going to be painting over that. I don't want any harsh, hard lines in my mouth. So you see there, I'm putting in some neutral colors to the left side of the mouth. So in that area, the light is going to be more parallel in that part of the face. So you're going to get a more neutral, greenish sort of tone, lot less saturation in that area. That's also going to help you with the transition of turning that part of the face away from the light and more towards the shadow. So here's another look at our reference photo so you can check the progress of how our face is coming along as compared to the reference. So there's a cast shadow that's happening on this left side of the lip. The lip is protruding out a little bit and blocking the light from hitting that part of the face, and it's been a little bit of a challenge for me to capture that correctly. Some of the transitions were coming off as a little too abrupt, and so I just keep going back in and softening the transitions and working in the lip color and sculpting up the lip, pushing back the shadow, and just keep working it till it looks right. Lots of mirror checks happening with this feature. You'll see here, I'm going to take a break from working on that shadow area of the mouth and work on a different area of the face so that my eyes can get a break from looking at that part, and then I'll come back into it with fresh eyes. All right, I've completed a full pass on the face, and now I'm going to move into the helmet. Of course, I'm sure that I'll see something later on in the face that I want to go back into and work on a little bit more, and that's okay. So you see me here working into the letter area. I'm actually using acrylic paint here because I want it to dry quickly, and then I can go back on top with the actual red color that's going to be in and around the words Firefighter and Vandermeulen. So with the persona style portraiture that I do, I like the areas that move away from the face to be painted in a more painterly fashion, a little more loose in the brushwork. The least amount of brush strokes that it takes to describe an area of the painting, the better. Another thing to note is that I never have put black on my palette with this painting. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I just chose to not add black at this time, and it turned out at the end I never did add it. But I'm using the Van Dyke brown and a little bit of the ultramarine blue mixed in to have my darkest darks. Another thing to note is the only medium that I used during this painting was a tiny bit of what's called walnut oil gel, and this is by Rublev. I'll put that in the description as well. Okay, I've been holding off on painting the ear. I was a little tired from working so hard on the face and that mouth especially. The ears are a little more challenging. Again, I have to tell myself I'm not painting an ear. I'm just painting some colors that go together a certain way and have a certain amount of saturation. With ears, you want to have a bit more red because there's a lot of blood flow close to the surface in ears. So I know some artists that I look up to say you can never have too much red in your ears. I'm tackling some of that red in and around the letters, so the area where the helmet is kind of pulling back and a little bit away from the light, those red areas are going to be a darker blackish red, and as it's bending and moving around towards the light, then the reds are going to become more saturated with a little bit of lighter red highlighted areas. Again, I'm looking for a certain degree of realism here in the helmet, but I don't want to get too tight. I do want to keep it painterly and get it done with as few brush strokes as possible. Once I get all the black areas painted in, I will be going back over the letters and painting them in, but I'm not going to bore you with that. You'll see it in the end result. Another thing that I did, these reflective stickers that are on the helmet, they were very bright in the photograph. I'm painting them pretty dull. I don't want them to be popping forward and like be the first thing that you see of the portrait. So to have a varying degree of lost and found edges in my portrait, I do want to get some of the stripes and the flag areas where there's blue. I want those areas to be really dark so that they're the same value as the helmet. Even though they're three different colors, basically, the values are going to be very close together so that I get a nice lost edge that way. So one of the key elements with the persona style portraiture is having elements of the background really capture and tell the story of your sitter. So with the firefighter here, he is very all-American. He was the football captain in high school. We've got a little football up in the right corner. Lives in a tropical beachy area. Dirt bike rider, and that little shaka hand, little hang loose symbol down the bottom is something that he created when he was in high school and made a little business out of, and he's pretty well known for it, so we had to put that in there too. That's our Jupe Life 561 shaka hand design. Another thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop a bit of saturated color on the collar of his jacket. That's the part of the jacket that's going to come forward and it's close to the viewer. And when you put in a saturated color, it reads as popping forward, being in front. So these little hand-drawn elements that you see around the portrait, I drew those in initially with a black Sharpie marker because I'm using these ultra smooth wooden panels, and you can draw on them with markers. And then my sketch was done initially with the erasable colored pencils. I just love this surface. It's really smooth and it takes just about any medium pretty well. Hey, I appreciate you guys sticking around this far into the video. I'll have some new videos coming out really soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.